Welcome back. Curious if these will be in the same stages or not as the slalom. I don't even remember what the first one was. Of course, everyone starts faster than I do. Oh no, everyone's generating so many particles. Go away, guys, you need to stop being on the camera. You're making performance bad. Stop it, go away. I need you to be behind me, so you don't make the game lag. Go away. Why are you in my kayak? There you go, so now we're fine. Mostly. Well, this is at least more like the mountain, this stage. Like this one I can believe is actually in the same place as the overworld, even though it's not any specific location. I feel like the amount that you, well, I would say that I feel like the amount that you sink is kind of exaggerated, but at least as exaggerated as the number of waterfalls you go off of. I really wonder what it would be like trying to race through these without a kayak. Because all of these have a really strong current through them. It would be really fun to do, I feel like. I feel like you'd get a surprisingly good time. Because you can move surprisingly quickly in a lot of cases if you're on foot. Like, remember how when I jumped off the waterfall the first time in the mountain resort, I actually went way further than you would normally go if you weren't on foot. Because you just keep moving forwards while you're in the air. There are cases where if you jump at the right time, like you jump off a waterfall, you just keep moving forwards. Like here I start falling downwards. And you lose speed as you land too. But if you're on foot, I feel like you actually go forwards a lot faster instead. And you can jump too, so you also get more airtime to start with. River keeps going here too. Alright. It's funny how some of these minigames have so much stuff to do and some don't. Like lots of the racing types of ones, the ones that really take advantage of one of the vehicles the game has created. Those ones tend to have a lot of stuff to do. So it's not like there's a lot of minigames left to do here, but some of them take a long time to get through. Ow. See, even the trees you see here are different kinds of trees. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I do think these are the same courses. So I think there are three different areas. There's the first one that you see, which is more mountain-like. There's the second one, which is jungle-like, and there's the third one, which is jungle-like on the outside, and then caves on the inside. It would be cool to map all of them out, all the parts that you actually get to see in game. Like how you can't hear the water at all. We'll get a kayak trophy at the end of all this. Or something like that. Or just things in the water trophy. Once we finish the the rafting game as well. I don't know what kinds of activities rafting might have. I feel like it's basically the same idea as those. Or if it would have the same courses too. Guess we'll have to see. Doesn't look like I'll get to it in this recording session though, so I'll have to remember when I get to it next time. I think I'll try to finish all the kayaking this sitting, and then after that I'll just do the rafting next time. And after that we'll move to the various shooting galleries and whatnot. Which I suspect will be over pretty quick because those games all seem very, very minimal. It's nice not having to worry about going through slaloms and whatnot this entire time. And I go down here now. And just kind of explore the... I just enjoy the rivers a bit more. I wonder how much rubber banding there is in these races. I was talking earlier about rubber banding and the races in the various cars, the off-road car racing. I don't know what rubber banding would look like here, because everything seems so physics-based, although that was the case in those minigames too. And your opponents will just get speed boosts or just slow down, it seemed like, depending on where you were. Which probably applies here just as well. You know, I'd be interested in reading at some point about the design principles of a racing game. Because there are certainly people in this world who have spent a lot of their time thinking about how to make a racing— Oh no! Ah! Again, you don't need to be conscious to win a race. There are people in this world, I'm sure, who have spent a lot of their time pondering the question of how to make a racing game fun and still feel fair. And different games all have different balances of that. Like more hardcore games like F-Zero or Wipeout probably lean a lot more towards the fair side of the spectrum than fun for everyone. And then you have things like Mario Kart that are way more towards the fun for everyone spectrum than actually feeling fair. And some games do manage to get around that a little bit, I guess, using item pickups and stuff like that. Like in Mario Kart, for instance, like no one, even if they don't so much like the game mechanic and it feels a little cheap, like nobody says that like the AI is cheating because they used a blue shell or whatever. Whereas you see AI rubber banding and it does feel like the AI is cheating if they go like twice their usual speed for a little bit. And you can see on the minimap that they're just flying around the bends at speeds that are not otherwise possible. Oh! Do it, Randy. Here we go. Oh, come on. Ow. If you heard that, you heard some kind of impact there, that was the controller hitting my thumb. So I guess item pickups are one thing, and they'll of course be weighted depending on where you are in the race too. Like in Mod Nation Racers, I remember, which I played quite a bit for a while, by the way. I don't think that ever really came up. That game, if you were in last, you would basically only ever get the speed boost power up, and that game had this kind of tier system where if you picked up multiple power ups in a row, they'd become more and more powerful versions progressively. And the most powerful version of the speed boost was just teleporting ahead some. I don't remember precisely how it worked. If it always teleported you to like the next racer in front of you or something like that. I think it had to do with where your opponents were. And then of course the lightning power-up was a pain, because if you used that at its highest level, it would actually hit everyone, and the way you had to avoid it was you just had to use your shield at the right moment. But if you were playing online, the audio-visual cues and the actual time when the lightning struck were not in sync. It was super easy to get used to the timing offline, but online you just had to guess, basically, depending on how much lag there was. Anyways, point being, power-ups are one interesting way of doing that, but of course they're still obviously weighted against, so to speak, fairness, in the sense of, and they give a handicap to people who are behind. But one that people, I think, generally consider more acceptable. But if you want a game that doesn't have that sort of thing, something that's more pure, and even Wipeout has items to use, interestingly, in spite of being a much more serious racing game series. I don't know if any of the Wipeout games give you different items, though, depending on where you are in the course, or what position you're in, or anything like that. I only ever played HD Fury, and I only ever got HD Fury because, BAM! I only ever got HD Fury because I got it when PSN got hacked, and they were offering a few games for free. And I only even wanted one of them, and I don't remember which one it was. And I just kind of ended up picking HD Fury as the other game, just why not. I played it a decent bit, not a ton though, but enough to gather an appreciation for that series. I think back to the depth that that game has and its learning curve. I remember, I've never watched it, but I do know there's, at least for HD Fury specifically, or HD, Fury was specifically an expansion pack for HD. But when you got off of the PlayStation Network, or sorry, we lost your credit card information campaign, they gave you the game with the Fury pack included. But somebody made a full hour-long video explaining the basics of Wipeout HD. I never watched it, but that always amused me, just as an example of how much stuff there is to know in that game. Not that there's like a ton of mechanics, it's just they're deep ones. But it would be interesting to see what kinds of thoughts go into something like that, because it's just, racing games are such an odd thing, where, and this probably applies to some degree in most competitive kinds of games, but racing games in particular feel like it's just so, it feels like the more fair it is, the less people like it in certain ways. And there are other games where there are less obviously intrusive ways of making things less realistic, less, yeah, I guess you might even say realistic. Like in fighting games, for instance. Oh shoot. Some games will have this as a gimmick of sorts, but lots and lots of fighting games. Oh, this actually goes out, this shit goes on to the beach. Yeah, this is actually like going out to the beach side of the resort. That's actually really cool. It's like we're kayaking from one part of the resort to another. Huh. Continuity. But fighting games, for instance, like, you don't get injured and then become less capable of fighting as time goes on, usually. Some games have a gimmick of, like, armor that can get broken and now you're more susceptible to damage, or in some cases, like, losing control of limbs or whatever. But not many. Most don't have stuff like that, and the reason is that it's not very fun. Because if you immediately get a good hit on your opponent and disable them, well then, now there's not, now you, it's just kind of a runaway effect. Now you have an advantage for the rest of the fight. So in games like that, people just don't really notice it, you just don't include mechanics like that. Whereas in racing games, it seems like you need to actively include mechanics to make up for the fair version of it. The plain, realistic version of it not being as fun. As odd as that may sound. I guess that's it. It's easier, it's simpler, there's less stuff to do to implement a fighting game that doesn't have those nuisances, even though they're more realistic. Whereas in a racing game, you have to implement those things actively. And if you do a bad job of it, bugs people. But it's also one of those things where people seem more cognizant of when things are less realistic, so people want that realism. You want it to feel real, but not actually be real, or if you give them something that's real, they tend not to like it. Anyways, see you next time. We'll try to do all the coin collection in one go. Bye, everyone.